My name is Narong. I'm 80 years old, and I want to begin with something that sounds like a paradox until you have lived it, and then it sounds like the most obvious truth in the world. When you learn to let go, everything comes, not because the universe rewards your detachment, not because releasing your grip on outcomes triggers some cosmic mechanism that delivers what you were reaching for, but because letting go changes what you are available to receive. It changes the quality of your presence. It changes the inner weather that your experience of life happens inside. And when all of that changes, life does not become more compliant with your wishes. It becomes more genuinely available to you in ways that grasping never allowed. I know how this sounds. I know it can sound like spiritual consolation, like something someone says to help you feel better about not getting what you want. I am not saying that. I am saying something much more precise, something that I understand not through philosophy, but through the particular texture of my own long experience. Grasping costs more than people realize, not just in the frustration of not getting what you grasp for, but in the quality of presence it forecloses, in the kind of life it makes possible and the kind it makes impossible. And letting go, when it is genuine rather than performed, returns something to you that grasping took away, your actual life, the one that is happening now, in this moment, rather than the one you are perpetually constructing and defending and worrying over in your imagination. Maybe you have tried letting go and found it to be more difficult than any teaching prepared you for. Maybe you have sat in meditation and told yourself to release something and found that the telling yourself did nothing. Maybe you have gone through genuine loss and found that the letting go did not happen through understanding or through practice, or through the passage of time in the way you hoped it would. If that is true, stay with me, because what I am going to share is not a technique for letting go. It is an honest account of what letting go actually is, what prevents it, and what I eventually found allows it. I was born in northern Thailand, in circumstances that taught me early to hold on. When you grow up without enough security, holding on becomes a survival skill. You hold on to the people who are stable. You hold on to the routines that work. You hold on to the money when you have it, and the status when you earn it, and the relationships when you find them, and the health when it is present. All of that holding on made very good sense in the context where it developed. The problem is that the pattern did not know how to stop when the context changed. It kept holding even when holding was no longer serving life, even when holding had become the thing that was blocking life, even when the wisdom of every teaching I had studied for decades was pointing clearly at the same thing. Let go. The pattern held on anyway. This is the thing about the holding pattern that most teachings miss. It does not respond to understanding. You can understand completely that attachment causes suffering and still be completely attached. You can know with full intellectual clarity that letting go is the path and still be completely unable to let go. Because the holding on is not primarily a belief, it is not primarily a choice. It is a conditioned response of the nervous system, a survival strategy that learned it was necessary long before you were old enough to question it. And survival strategies do not dissolve because you have understood something new. They dissolve slowly through experience, through the accumulation of enough evidence that safety is possible even with open hands. You see, the real obstacle to letting go is almost never a lack of understanding about why letting go would be beneficial. It is a lack of trust that anything will remain if you open your hands. The holding on is almost always holding on to something because some deep part of you believes that if you release it, it will simply be gone. The relationship, the identity, the sense of being enough, the particular form that security has taken in your life. And because that fear is real, the letting go requires something more than instruction. It requires the gradual development of trust, not in a general or abstract sense, trust that is built through direct experience of what remains when you release what you have been holding. And here's what I didn't understand then. Letting go is not an act, it is a process. And the process is not something you do once and complete. It is something you return to, again and again, in small ways and large ways, in the letting go of a thought you're about to follow, in the letting go of an interpretation you have been defending, in the letting go of a plan that is no longer fitting the reality in front of you, in the letting go of an old story about who you are that is no longer serving who you are becoming. Each of those small lettings go is practice, and the practice accumulates. The hands that have released 10,000 small things are more capable of releasing the large ones when the large ones arrive. The Buddhist teaching on this is not primarily about outcomes. It is not primarily about what happens after you let go. It is about what you discover in the act of letting go itself. What you discover is that what you feared would disappear when you released your grip was never actually held in place by your grip. The things that are genuinely yours do not require your grasping to remain, and the things that required your grasping to stay were never really yours in the first place. This sounds almost too clean when stated simply, but in practice it is genuinely startling. The first time you genuinely release something you have been holding tightly and discover that the release did not destroy what you feared it would destroy, something changes in the nervous system at a level below thought. You know what surprised me most? The relief. I had expected loss. I had expected emptiness. I had expected the particular kind of grief that comes from opening your hand and finding it bare. What came instead, at least in the moments when the letting go was genuine, was something closer to expansion, like a room that had been full of furniture, suddenly having space to breathe in, like a hand that had been clenched for so long it had forgotten what it felt like to be open. That open hand, that breathing room, was not nothing, it was something. Something I had been too full of holding to be able to receive. What most people don't realize is that letting go and receiving are the same movement seen from different directions. You cannot receive with a closed hand. You cannot take in what is available when your attention is entirely consumed by defending and maintaining and clinging to what you already hold. The moment of genuine letting go is also the moment of genuine availability. And availability is what allows the fullness of life to reach you. Not the fullness you were reaching for, the fullness that was already present, but could not penetrate the defenses you had built around what you were refusing to release. Let me explain what this looked like in my own practice. There was a period in my life, already well into my decades at the monastery, when I was carrying something that I had convinced myself was devotion, but that was actually fear in a devotion-shaped container. It was my attachment to being seen as a spiritually mature person. I had spent years building that identity. It had been confirmed by the regard of others and by the roles I had been given, and by my own internal narrative. And I was holding on to it with enormous energy that I had not yet allowed myself to see as grasping. Because it did not feel like grasping. It felt like caring deeply about something important. Then circumstances changed in a way that put that identity at genuine risk. Something happened that I cannot describe in detail, but that made it very clear to those around me, and eventually to myself, that I was not as far along as I had believed and presented. And the first response was pure holding on, pure defense, pure quiet desperation to preserve what I felt slipping. That period of holding on was among the most exhausting and most dishonest of my life. And then, not through a grand spiritual decision, but through simple exhaustion of the holding, something released. I stopped defending. I stopped managing the narrative. I let the identity fall where it fell. And what happened next is the thing I have returned to many times in memory as one of the most important moments of my practice. Nothing terrible happened. The things I feared would be destroyed were not destroyed. Some of them actually became clearer and more available without the distortion of the maintained image in front of them. And I felt something I had not felt in years, honest presence with my own life, without the energy cost of the performance. That experience, more than any teaching, showed me what letting go actually means, and why everything comes when you do. The secret of letting go is not really a secret. It is just very difficult to practice. Difficult because it requires giving up the illusion of control. Difficult because it requires trusting that what is genuinely yours does not need your grip to remain. Difficult because the nervous system that learned to hold has to accumulate enough experiences of safe releasing before it can genuinely open the hand. But when that accumulation finally reaches the threshold, when the trust has been built through enough small, genuine releases, something shifts that is very hard to describe and impossible to fake. A quality of presence that is available only to the person who is not spending half their inner energy on maintenance and defense. A quality of receiving that is only possible with genuinely open hands. At 80 years old, my hands are more open than they have ever been. Not because I have lost my care for life. I care more, actually, for precisely the things that matter. But I hold them differently now, not grasping, not defending, more like cradling, the way you hold something genuinely precious, gently, without the crushing grip of fear. And in that gentleness, more has come than in all the years of grasping. Not because the universe has become more generous, because I have become more available to receive what was always there. Tell me in the comments what you are holding most tightly right now. Not to judge the holding, just to name it. Because sometimes knowing clearly what you are grasping is the first real step toward learning what it would mean to open the hand. And if this message gave you something genuine to return to, stay close to this space. Because letting go is not something you accomplish and move past. It is something you practice in small ways and large ways across the whole length of a life.